How's it going, everyone? Spenny here, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about an incident that occurred on a Greyhound bus, of all places. This did occur in Manitoba, Canada. For those of you that don't know, the Greyhound bus is a inner city bus that's the biggest in North America, and it basically just takes you from place to place. It's like a form of public transit. And this is actually why this case is probably so well known, because the transit system is so well known. This story has a completely bizarre ending, and I was not expecting it. When I first heard of this case, it kind of caught me off guard, and you'll see why. Even I was really upset with the outcome, because it's very unfortunate. This case is very graphic, so please watch at your own discretion, and without further ado, let's get right into the video. So in July 30th, 2008, Tim McLean was working as a carnival barker in Winnipeg, Canada. A carnival barker is kind of like a salesperson for a carnival. He's basically a salesperson that directs people on where to go and tries to get them to spend money. Following his job, he got on the Greyhound bus and he made his way to the back, right beside where the washrooms are. And this was at 6:55 p.m. Later on the bus ride, as they made a few more stops, another passenger by the name of Vince Lee, who was 40 years old, would enter onto the bus, and originally he sat at the front of the bus, but then a few minutes later, for some reason, he moved, went to the back of the bus, he made a little nod or made eye contact with Tim and continued to sit beside him. For Tim, this was just any other normal day on a bus. He didn't really think too much of it, and he put his earbuds in and he just dozed off. At approximately 8:30 p.m., just under 2 hours after Tim originally got on the bus, the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, so it's basically just the police for 8 different provinces within Canada with a little fancy name. They were informed of an occurrence that happened within the bus, and they went over and they had to send over tactical units to try and disengage the threat. This whole interaction lasted hours until 1:30 in the morning when they finally got the situation under control. But what actually happened on the bus? Well, sit tight, because this is probably one of the most unexpected occurrences to ever happen. So a while after Tim fell asleep in his seat on the bus, Vince suddenly just pulled a huge knife out and began stabbing Tim in the neck and the chest repeatedly. The bus driver immediately stopped the bus and tried to intervene, along with 2 other passengers, and they were fought off by Vince as he was slashing the knife at them, and they did manage to get behind a locked door on the bus. Vince would then return to the badly wounded and bleeding Tim, and he had a whole job in mind. He was not finished. Vince then decapitated Tim. He showed it off to everyone outside of the bus. Then he went back in, severed other body parts, and began to eat the remains. When the police arrived at 9 p.m., they found all the other passengers alive and well, huddled up around off to the side on the street. Prior to the police arriving, Vince did attempt to steal the bus and drive away. However, there was an immobilizer set up in the system of the bus, which means that you need a specifically programmed keycard along with the car keys in order to move the vehicle. So he didn't have this smart card. Even though the keys were already in the bus, he wasn't able to go anywhere. The police officers tried their best to negotiate with Vince, and he just was not listening. He began to just go back and eat more in front of them. Vince was heard mumbling to himself that he had to stay on the bus forever. The witnesses also said that for the majority of the encounter, he was seen holding the head everywhere he went. At 1:30 a.m. that night, Vince was still on that bus, and he attempted to escape once again by breaking a window on the bus. However, he was apprehended by the police officers, who tased him twice and handcuffed him, and later on put him in the back of their cop car. The emergency services then had to actually recover all of the body parts they could from all ends of the bus. It was a mess. However, while they were recovering, they noticed that there were a few things actually missing. Tim's ear, nose, and tongue were actually found in Vince's pockets, and Tim's eyes and heart were actually never recovered, and they were said to have been eaten by Vince. At 10 a.m. the next morning, the Greyhound bus representatives took all of the other citizens that were riding the bus to a local store and got them all new clothes because they must have been a mess. This was all, of course, after they left the police station, giving their insight on what exactly happened. They would then all make their way back to their family members later on that day. Vince's trial commenced on March 3rd of 2009. Lee pled not criminally responsible because he said he had a mental disorder. This means that he accepted the criminal offenses that occurred that day. However, he was unable to avoid the event that took place. The psychiatrist said that Vince committed these acts because he had voices in his head from God, which told him that he had to kill the devil beside him or else he would die himself. The judge actually accepted this diagnosis and ruled that Vince was not criminally responsible for the horrid acts that occurred that day. Lee was taken to the Selkirk Mental Hospital, where he would reside until 2015. In 2016, it was reported that Vince changed his name to Will Lee Baker, and he was also seeking to live independently. Vince actually won the right to live alone by himself as a free man later that year in February. Vince now lives in Manitoba with a new name, Will, as a free man with no limitations, which resulted from the acts committed in 2008. I personally think this case is absolutely insane, and I think that Vince should definitely have life in prison. The pain he caused for Tim, and not only him, but his family, is just immeasurable. And on top of all that, Tim had a son that was going to be born, and that ended up being born 5 months after his death, who had to be raised by a single mother. What do you guys think? Do you think that he earned the right to his freedom by being mentally insane? Or do you think that he should still be in prison right now and for the rest of his life? And a huge thanks goes out to all of my Patreon members and supporters. If you want to know more about how to become a Patreon member and a member of the channel, all that information will be linked down in the description of the video. I'd like to thank everybody so much for watching this video. This was my first video on this channel, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one.